Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session on Introduction to Flutter and Dart. We know that this session got delayed multiple times, and we appreciate your patience truly. And I am excited to introduce our session speaker today, Mr. Wilfred Almeida. He is a Linux Foundation mentee at Harbor and also a student postman leader. He has a deep understanding of the Flutter framework and can provide valuable insights into its capabilities and use case. In today's session, Wilfred will guide us through the fundamentals of Flutter and Dart. We will also have some hands-on practice using Dart, and he will also share his valuable experience and answer your questions. So let's give him a warm welcome and let's get started on this session and to learn from his expertise and insights.
Okay, hi folks, and Anam, thank you for the introduction. So without too much delay, let's get started. So I'll just quickly walk you folks over the agenda of today's session. So we'll take a look at these 6 things. First, try and understand the inconvenience native development has, and basically a need of Flutter, and the problem Flutter solves. And then we'll just take a quick sneak peek into the internals of Flutter, how things actually work under the hood. And Dart is the programming language used with Flutter. So why is Dart used, and what's the specific purpose Dart serves? And then we'll do some hands-on coding with resources. And then we have some special announcement at the end. So I hope you folks stay tuned till then, and let's get started. Oh yeah, my introduction got done, so we can move ahead. So starting off, speaking of the inconvenience that native development has, it is platform specific development. So when I say platform specific, you have major two operating systems, Android and iOS, when you are connected with mobile devices. So when you want to develop applications for Android and iOS, these are two separate ecosystems. You need to write, basically as developers, you need to write different code bases to develop applications of on both of these. Now let's think from a perspective of a company. If you want to develop an application, you are a company, so you have to hire developers for your Android part, you have to hire developers for your iOS part, and then both of these developers have to stay in sync, and all of the release cycles, the application, what features are shipped. One feature might be working in Android device, but it might be broken in iOS, and one feature gets released in iOS first, then it comes to Android, and the issue might be related, since the coding might be somewhere fast, somewhere slow. So all of these are really pain points that exist in industry. So as developers, it might not always concern us because our job is to write code. For people who manage and run businesses, this is a major pain point. Apart from that, there are learning curves. If you want to develop, let's say, an iOS app, then you need a MacBook, you need Apple's proprietary development environment, then you need to learn the programming languages. And oftentimes, if you see, these programming languages have the purpose of just one platform. If you try to develop application on iOS using Swift, then as far as my experience is concerned, I haven't seen Swift being used in any platform other than iOS. So, and also, if you want to develop on Android, then you have to learn Java, Kotlin, and then for making the UI, you have to learn XML. So these are learning curves, because when a developer is learning, everyone starts at some point, and when you get multiple things thrown at you to learn, then it's often overwhelming. And also debugging, because if you're trying to debug, let's say some feature works in iOS and some it doesn't work in Android, and you're trying to figure out what exactly is the reason. So you might need to go and look under in the iOS code, that why is it working, then look in the Android code why it's not working, then mimic the state of the iOS application in the Android application so that the application starts working here. So debugging with these points also gets troublesome. So for this, what Flutter does is, Flutter is basically a framework that you write code once, it will run on your Android devices, it will run on your iOS devices, it will also run on your website. So using just one code base, you are serving three platforms: Android, iOS, and web. So Android and iOS applications are in the most trend, and the web is also gaining a steady pace. So So these are the problems I discussed. So Flutter solves these problems. So platform independent development. So Flutter code runs on Android, iOS, and web, and soon it will run on Windows and Linux also. So for your all of the devices that you can use, uh, there is just need to write one specific code, one code base you have to maintain, and your applications will be everywhere. And only one language to learn, that is Dart. If you're trying to develop native Android applications, you have to learn either Java or Kotlin, and then the UI is specifically designed using XML. So learning XML and then another learning Java and writing code in both of these, it is not so much convenient. It is obviously possible, but it is not convenient. So here you have to learn only one language, and debugging obviously only one code base to look at. So when you have only one thing to look at, just get it working once and it works everywhere. So no need to maintain different code bases. So yeah, so before moving ahead, let's first try to understand the internals of how Flutter works. So whatever Flutter code you write, it is written in the Dart programming language. So what happens internally is the Dart engine will convert your code into native Android code and native iOS code. So you are not concerned with how the code gets converted to Android, how it gets converted to iOS native code. It might be any language, it might be any platform, it doesn't matter. As far as web is concerned, the code will also get compiled to JavaScript. So you are not concerned at all with the underlying languages. All we have to learn is Dart. So write the code once in Dart and it will run on all platforms. So I have prepared a GitHub gist of resources. So I think the team can share the resource in the chat, and let's just move on to this gist here. And there are links provided here. We'll go over to each and every link and then just work our session here. So I think let's just wait, and you can drop me a message in chat once you have opened the link. You can either split screen with the Zoom and your browser, so you can watch side by side and also do it hands on. So this is how it works for you. And if your link is open, then just say yes in the chat, in Zoom chat. Let me know that you have opened the link, that we can move ahead. It's just a simple list, and there are these certain links here, and we'll walk through all of these links. Okay, so I'm waiting, I'm taking a look at the chat, and I can see many people have opened the link. So just send me more. Okay, somebody wants the link. Share. So the link is in the chat again. You can go on the link and just drop 2, 3 more confirmations, and we'll move ahead. Just say yes in the chat, and I'll know. All right, so moving on, there is this first link. You can see what is Flutter. It goes to the official website of Flutter. Just open the link and move on to the site, or you can, for this part, you can stay tuned on the screen. And this is basically the tagline of Flutter. You will just land on the homepage of Flutter, and this one single page, it can show you the capabilities of Flutter, and also there are resources and all of that. So if you are trying to learn Flutter, this is just one place you need to come, and you can navigate everywhere from here. So this is just a homepage of Flutter. You can take a look at it, and obviously it's built using Flutter web. So as you can see, the interface is beautiful, and let's just move ahead. So we'll come to this Flutter roadmap part later on. Let's first understand Dart and its purpose. Dart is a programming language which is used by Flutter, and we'll try to understand why exactly Dart Flutter uses Dart. So I hope you are at the blog post. This is quite an in detailed blog, so you can give it a read anytime. Okay, let's just come to this link. I think I did go over this diagram. So yeah, I'll explain it from here. So what happens is you write your Flutter code, it gets converted into multiple languages code bases. So your Android code for Android application code will get converted to native code. For iOS application, the code will get converted to native iOS languages, whatever those languages might be. And for web, it will get converted into JavaScript code. So this Dart has this capability. So the people who made the Flutter framework, these people were quite experienced. So making of the Chrome browser's V8 engine and basically like highly experienced people. So when they were tasked with making a framework, they specifically chose Dart because Dart has two capabilities that we'll take a look at. One is that it can be compiled into multiple platform codes. So this compilability, so that you write the code in Dart, it will get converted into Java or Kotlin or Swift or whatever it is. And as developers, you don't need to bother with that. And another cool feature is it's a feature called hot reload. So I'll just share.
हाँ तो वही करना पड़ेगा ना देखो ऐसे अपने आप नहीं आएगा ना
So is my whiteboard visible, Mr. Drop yes in chat, and I'll know that my whiteboard is visible.
yes it's visible.
All right. So since the white is visible, so what happens is when you write your code, let's say this is your code you have written. So when this code needs to be executed, what happens is this code, let's say you're developing a native Android application, this code is written in Java. So this code will first get compiled into Java bytecode, and then there is something called as JVM. So this gem will take this intermediary compiled Java code and then it will execute. So what this is doing is this is efficient, but development cycles are too long because if you're trying to compile a native Android application, then the development as developers, let's say you're making a screen you're making. So let's say this is your screen and this has, let's say this is one input field and this is one button. So you're trying to make this user interface. Now you initially you position this input field, let's say towards the left of the screen, and then you want to see how it would look when you position to the right of the screen. So when you do this, you have to go to the whole cycle of this application compilation. So what happens is you first write this code. This code will whole get compiled. The complete application binary will be built, and then it would be installed on your device, and then you can see. So even if you move this one input box from left to right, you would have to wait for a certain time. It depends on your device, but let's say the average waiting time is almost 3 to 4 minutes. So every time you change, like, let's say you are moving it from left to right, you just changed one value from left to right, but you have to wait 3 4 minutes to take the for the changes to reflect on your screen. And this happens every time when you're making, let's say, big applications, you have to design many screens. So this is highly inconvenient. So to solve this problem, what Flutter does is, or Dart, it has a feature called as hot reload. So what hot reload basically is, it's whatever code you write gets immediately reflected on your device. So let's say this is your device, and again you are designing this some UI. This is something towards left, something towards, you are trying to move it towards the right side. So what happens is when you run this code, so in earlier we saw the whole steps of execution. So steps of execution where the compilation happens and then the installation happens, and then you can see the changes in your code. So all of these steps which are there, these steps are skipped, and what happens is only one thing happens. The code you write, it directly gets compiled and visible on the screen. So this is a feature called as hot reload. So a similar feature exists in React. If any of you are experienced in web development, know the feature of hot reload. So whatever changes you make, it only takes certain seconds for the changes to be visible on the screen. So this makes the development cycles very fast. So this increases developer productivity, because if you are making a large scale application, your time is not wasted, because if you have to wait for 3 to 4 minutes just to see a change from left to right, then you will get distracted, and most of your time is spent just in the building process. So Flutter takes this abstraction away, so it increases the development speed. And let's go back to the blog post here. So if you take a look at this blog, it is written that there are some testimonials here. Let me just quickly find it. Yeah, so the mobile developer, what the developer had to say about Flutter's hot reload feature. So
Wilfred,
you
you're
can
not
just give
speaking.
just a second. So did the screen share stop? Let me know once the screen is visible. Just again drop a yes in the chat and I'll see. All right, so since the screen is visible, let's just move on to this blog post. So if you go to the resources just shared here, so there is a blog, why Flutter uses that. So just open this blog link here and scroll to this section, Flutter's sub-seconds stateful hot reload. So once you are here, these are some developer testimonials. So people who develop applications, they have tried out these features and they have said that these features are great. So once you start developing, so the example I gave here, you move thing by just by 2 pixels, you don't have to wait. And well, experienced developers are saying it's frustrating, and from my experience also, it is frustrating. So let's just quickly go over the features. This is intercomparability and hot reloading. And moving on, let's take a look at Flutter internals. So in the Flutter internal section here, there is a link of official documentation. So just open the link here, and this is the official documentation page, and it explains the Flutter internal architecture. So again, drop a yes in the chat once you're on the screen, once you're on blog post in the documentation. Yeah, just go to the gist here and select doc and go there. All right. So moving on, this is an in detailed blog post. We won't take a look at the whole thing, but I'll just explain an high level overview of what happens. So the whole architecture of Flutter, we can say it is in 3 layers. So one is the Flutter framework. The code you write for Flutter is written in Dart. So this code, this topmost layer is the code you write. Then the second layer is the Dart engine. So the engine written. So because some magic happens that whatever Dart code you write gets converted into the platform specific code for Android and iOS. Some magic has to happen. Somebody has to do the conversion. So this conversion is done by the engine, which is written in C and C++. So it has internal functions here. These are, let's say, low-level APIs that are exposed. So one API that exists here is, let's say, this text layout API. So whatever text you have displayed, let's say you have made an application for web using Flutter Web. So you must have displayed some text here. So this text, you just wrote the text, but your computer needs, or your device needs to figure out that what part of the screen these pixels are to be painted so that this text is visible. So that needs to be figured out. So there is this text layout function or the text layout internal component that is used. So similarly for all of the other features, the Dart engine takes care of that. And then there is this embedder. So this is platform specific. So whatever application you are running, it runs on your operating system. It needs communication with the host operating system. It needs system resources. Let's say our application is trying to make a network call or trying to do something. So it needs CPU allocation. So that CPU allocation and all of that, it needs to be done in coordination with the operating system. So that will be done by the embedder. So it's I have highlighted this section, but if you just take a look at this paragraph, take a look at this statement that I have highlighted, just for a second, you can try to read it. So the embedded is written in a language appropriate for the platform. So for Android platforms, it's written in Java and C++. For iOS and Mac OS, it's written in Objective-C, Objective-C++, and it's written in C++ for Windows and Linux. So if you had to develop your application for these three platforms or these 3-4 platforms, Android, iOS, Mac OS, Windows, and Linux, you would have to learn each of these languages, let's say individually. But what's happening here is you are not doing that case. So whatever code you just write it in some standard format. That standard format is Dart programming language, and then that code gets converted into this platform specific code. And then at the core is the Flutter engine. So this second layer, the engine part. So this paragraph nicely summarizes it. So it is mostly written in C++, and whatever new, let's say the engine is responsible for rasterizing composited lines that needs to be painted. So whatever, let's say this particular paragraph is painted on the screen. So the engine took care of that. It told your operating system that on the screen, go on this certain position and then draw the character A, draw the character T, then put a space, then type this. So this whole whatever happened, it was taken care by the Flutter engine. All you had to do is you have to write text, you have to give the position, give whatever text you want on the screen, and that's all. So the engine is exposed via an internal framework. So you don't need to absolutely understand these things, but as you are developing applications, it's nice to know or nice to have some sort of understanding that how things are working internally. Because once you start to learn, I would say don't just write code. Try to also understand that whatever code you have written, how that code is working internally. So you can just take a look at this last highlighted paragraph here. So what this means is that developers interact with Flutter to the Flutter framework, which provides a modern reactive framework written in Dart language. And it is there are also a lot of resources for layouts and functional libraries and stuff like that. And this is just a brief overview of whatever components that exist. I do recommend reading this blog, this post once. It's not necessary that you will understand anything or you don't sit hard and fast and try to understand each and everything. Just give a quick read, whatever things you understand, you understand. And then the second section here is anatomy of an app. So this is again the same thing, the Dart app, whatever code you write it in Dart language. Then there is the Flutter framework. The framework will take care of the code, whatever the internals are. Then there is the engine which will actually execute your code. So all of these things, if you see, these are platform agnostic. It means that these are platform independent. No matter your platform, let it be Android, iOS, web, whatever it is, all of these things, platform is not basically concerned here. And then you have this platform specific. So whatever the embedder part or the internal runner part. So all of these levels of abstraction, you are just as Flutter developers, you are mostly concerned with the topmost layer, and whatever these 3-4 layers are there underlying, these are automatically taken care of. So if you just want a short overview of each and every layer that exists here, you can give this a read. And there is also the source code, but I wouldn't recommend going on the source code because mostly you won't understand anything. So I think that's pretty much it, and that's enough for the what internals Flutter has. And let's move on. Let's go on to Dart and do some hands-on. Let's write some actual code. So if you just come back to the gist here, there is getting started with Dart. So there are two links here, sample and cheat sheet. So let's just go to the samples. So you can close all of these other tabs and we'll just focus on this one tab here, this one page for a while. And yeah, again, drop a yes in the chat once you're on the link. I'll just write and meanwhile I'll take a water break. Some more. Just quickly go to the this that is shared, and there is this samples link in the getting started with Dart section. Just open the link and yeah, let's go on. I hope everyone is there. So we'll get started with samples. So let's just first understand Dart is a very simple language. As developers, when we get started, Hello World is the de facto thing we do. So keep this link open and here there is a link for Dartpad. So below the section there is Dartpad. So just open this link dartpad.dev and will be this is a web ID, or let's say here you can write code for Dart in your browser. So no need to install anything to execute Dart. You can simply get started and this is a very powerful platform. And what we'll do, okay, so again, drop a yes in the chat once you are here. Once you are on Dartpad, it's just dartpad.dev. Go to the this and there is a link for Dartpad. And hope everyone is here. So we'll quickly move on. So what we'll do is from the samples link here is a Hello World program. So we'll just copy paste this whole program and we'll come here and just paste this program. So there is some documentation here. If you want take a look at the documentation, you can do that as well. So just paste this Hello World code here. It's a really simple code and hit run. And let's see what we get. So yeah, obviously we got Hello World because that's what we are printing here. So let's just take the text and print something else. Let's say hello GDSC and we do this. And yes, we have successfully wrote our first line of Dart code. So I guess it's time to edit our resumes and add Dart developers there. Okay, just joking. Don't do that yet. So the first thing we'll take a look at variables. So if you're familiar with any sort of programming, you know variables are there in every language. So similarly, Dart has variables. But notice one thing here, if you have tried out some other languages like C, C++, or Java, you need to specify the data type of the variable. But in Dart, it is optional. You can just write where name of the variable and whatever value you want to assign. So let's quickly get back to the Dartpad and make a variable. So let's make a variable where my name and let's assign it a value. And what we'll do is we'll print this value. So my name, and if I execute this code, oh, what an error or what? Nice, nice, nice. So yes, this is the most famous error we get, semicolon, and the code is executing, and yes, I got my name. So whatever you write here, so we just made a variable with a string value. So we just made a string variable. Similarly, if you want to make any variable, now since I don't need to specify any value here, let's say I change the value to a number and I just hit run again, and it will execute, and I got the number output. So this is one thing you need to do, because when you are writing a big line of code, that let's say a string, and then let's try the Java style to make a variable. If you're trying to make a variable in Java, you have to, let's say, public string my name is new and my name here. And obviously the semicolon. So if you're trying to do this in Java, you have to sort of do like write this big line, but in Dart you're just doing one thing, this where. What happens is the Dart compiler will internally infer the value, so it will see that you have assigned a number here. So it will figure out on its own that the data type of this variable is int. So yeah, just double click on the variable, just double click here and see that it is type of int. So this was automatically inferred. So when you're writing code, you don't need to bother with data types as much. And let's just change the value here to something else. Let's change it to a string. And now if we try to double click it, then it automatically detects that the data type is string. So that's really convenient. And the basic data types that are there is string, there is numeric data types, integer, then floating point number, and then this is an array of strings, and also this is an object. So let me copy paste this here, and and also you're getting automatic like ID support. If you have written, let's say, some code in VS Code or something, it generally gives you an error. Dartpad also gives you an error that let's see undefined my name. So we just deleted the my name variable, so it cannot find my name. So obviously it's giving us an error. And let's try to print out this image and see what happens. Mm, yeah, so it just got printed as it was. So this is pretty simple. This is mostly JSON code. So if you have worked with some web development or anything, you know that it's JSON. And if you have successfully passed a JSON value coming from an API in Java, then I would like to give you a handshake or a high five, because trying to parse JSON in Java is a big bloat code and it's very inconvenient trying to migrate to trying to hop through different libraries and stuff like that just to parse JSON. So here you have to just, it happens automatically, nothing to do here. Then these are the basic control flow statements, and let's copy paste this if statement here and try to see what output we get. And oh, I got an error. Let's see what the error is. So undefined name here. What happened here is the year variable is not defined there as well. So I just copy pasted this code and this year variable which I'm trying to use, but I haven't declared or initialized the variable. So that's why I'm getting the error. So what I'll do is I'll simply make, or let's just do one thing. Since we learned about variables here, in the Zoom chat, make an appropriate variable. What do you think should be the line of code that goes here so that this error goes away? So quickly just think about that, and let's put it in the chat. Just write your code in Dartpad and then you can paste it, or just, it's fine if it's not correct, at least you will try, and trying is what matters. So don't be shy that it's wrong or anything. Just whatever code you think appropriate that will solve this error here. Put the code in the chat box. Yes, we are having some submissions here. So yeah, I can see two messages. Somebody sent me a direct message. It would be appreciated if you just put it for everyone so that everyone can see. So yeah, if you will just put it for everyone the message, then I'll just walk over the correct solution for this. All right, so there are three solutions here. So let's first try the first one sent by Ram Gupta, and I'll just copy paste the code that he has sent. And if I do this here, and let me try to run. Does the code run? No, we get a big red error. So what happened here is this code is partially correct. You declared a variable named here, you gave the data type, it's fine, but you didn't give it a value. You are trying to check for a value, but a value was not given. So the error is saying that not nullable variable here must be assigned. Here must be assigned before it used. That is so obvious because here we are trying to use a value, but we haven't specified any value, so it will give us an error. And now Shreyansh Shukla has sent his piece of code. Let me try to put that here and let's see if the error goes away this time. And is it gone? Is it gone? Yeah, it's gone. So we got the correct one. So what this did is it made a variable named here and also assigned it a value. So if I take away this assignment of value and just keep it where here and try to run the code again, I got an error that cannot read properties. This is some big error, but it's basically the same thing that I'm trying to use value that I haven't assigned. So here, this time, if you notice, we got a different error because cannot read properties of null trying to read. So what happened here is in the previous code shared by Ram, we had given the data type as int specifically. So the Dart compiler knew that this, even though this here variable is of type int, even though it doesn't have a value, the compiler knew that it is of type int. But here we have given where. So the compiler here has two tasks. First, figure out the data type of the variable and then use it here. But since we have in the case of where the data type is determined from the type of data we store. So if we store here a value, based on this value, the compiler will understand that, okay, it is of type int. But since we didn't provide any value, nothing was there for the compiler to try to determine the data type. That's why we got this different error. So yeah. And this is a for loop favorite. So let's just try to copy paste this simple for loop, this second one. If you want to try it out, you can copy paste it. And all right, so if I run this code, what output will I get? Just give a quick thought that if I run this code, what is the output I'll get? And let's see by running it actually. Yeah, I just got the numbers 1 to 12 printed. So what happens here is this is a for loop. Basically, if I had to, let's say, print these numbers, I would have to, what I manually would have to do is go here and on every line like this, I would have to go and let's say I'm printing here. And again, if you try to see here, this variable is not there because we aren't defining the variable anywhere for this function to use. It is definitely defined here, but it is for the for loop. You see there are these guard brackets that will allow only execution in this for loop. It won't be accessed outside. So again, we got the error. So if I have to, print this to it is just one print statement, only the value is changing, but I'm copy pasting code. So this will make your code base very large because let's say you're trying to print some 1,000 lines and you definitely don't want to write 1,000 lines of print statement. So what for does is it is basically a loop that will take a piece of code and run it for a certain number of times. That is what is happening. So this for keyword, it indicates the Dart compiler will understand that, okay, a for is detected. It means that whatever code is specified in these curly braces is to be executed multiple times. I'll repeat, whenever a for is detected, the Dart compiler understands that, okay, what code is written in these curly braces needs to be executed multiple times. But it needs a definite number of times because it needs to know how many times to run this code. So that logic we specify inside here. So what we're doing here is we are making a variable on the fly. So Dart has this support that you don't need to define the variable up above here and then use it. You just as you need it on the fly, you can declare and define. So this is just another variable initialization that we saw earlier. So you are making this, and then month is, this is the less than equal to operator, less than equal to 12, and month plus plus. So what it will do is, initially the value of 1 was assigned, and from 1, okay, the value starts at 1, it starts at 1, but up to where should, until where should the value go, or the value, what should the value be till I run the code. So that's what 12 is. So 1 to 12, these are the accepted ranges. So the value is 1, the value is 12. So what it will do is, it will see, okay, the value 1. So it will try to execute this command here. So whatever the, here we have written month, but it will substitute the value of whatever is lies here in here, and it will try to do the comparison manually. So looks something like this in the compiler's internal state of representation. So 1 less than or equal to 12. So the value 1 is obviously less than, and less than or equal to 12. So the condition here is true. So since it detected a true condition here, it will go inside and it will print the value. And this is month plus. So value always cannot be 1, because you have to somehow increment the value to 2, 3. So what is happening here is, you are changing the value. So it necessarily doesn't have to be plus plus. You can do here, let's say plus equal to 3. And if I just run this code, let's just see the output we get. So here we got 14710. So let's try to understand what happened internally here. Initially the value was 1. So it printed this 1, then it went to this statement. So month plus equal to, so what I'm telling is, in the value of month, add 3. So it will do something, some computation that looks like this. It will take the value of 1 and then it will add 3, and it will assign the value to again the variable here. So basically the value of month is changed and it adds 3 every time. So 1 plus 3 equals to 4. So got the output 4 here. Again, it will try to do 4 plus 3, which is equal to 7. So we got the 7 here, and then the 10. And let's see what happened when the reached 10. So the value of month is 10, and then it added 3. So this result comes to 13. So it will take the value of 13, and again we have this comparison here. So it will substitute the value here, and let's say 13 less than equal to 12. So this condition results to false, because 13 is greater than 12. It is not less than, and it is not equal to 12. So the condition results to false. So get out of this loop, and the number of iterations stop. So yeah, pretty in-depth explanation, but I hope you folks did understand that. Drop an emoji in the chat, happy face, if you understood it. Drop in some happy faces. All right. Okay, and similarly, there are the concepts of basic programming concept, functions of functions. You define functions, you call functions, and stuff like that. So if you are trying to learn that, this page is a great resource, and in my opinion, this is the only place you need to refer when you are trying to do something. Because if you need an example of a function, you can refer imports. So this is an import statement. What it does is, whatever code somebody else has written, let's say the math code, it performs math operations. You want to use that code in your code, you simply import this, and you can do that. Then there are oriented programming constructs of class and inheritance and variables and stuff like that. So there is mixins, inheritance, abstract class, async. So let's just take a look at what asynchronous means. So let's say you are making a network call. You're simply trying to get the weather. So I'll change the screen share to my whiteboard here, and clear this all out. Okay. Isn't this going okay? So let's say this is your application, and here the data of weather stored, and you are just simply taking the weather from the weather service and displaying it in your application. So it's the weather application. Let's say this service is slow. It gives you a response in 3 seconds. So whatever 3 seconds, your application doesn't have to wait for the 3 seconds, because if your application will freeze, let's say the user clicked a button get a weather and your application just froze, then the user will say that okay, this application is bad, it just froze on me and it never gave me the result. So you don't want that, because what happens is if you make write the code for it, uh, let let me quickly move back to my dashpad and try to explain that what is synchronous. Okay, so let's say we have this order of programming. Okay, so there is some code you have written. Then there is a network call to get weather data, and then there is code to display the data and code to display the results. So what happens is when you made this network call, the API took 3 seconds to respond. So meanwhile, your application was executing. It came here to the first line, then it went to the next line, and it came here and it stopped. So when it stops here, no other code can execute. So the application is in a frozen state. Now let's say the waiting time is from 3 seconds to 1 minute. So your application shouldn't have to wait for 1 minute for whatever operation is happening in the background. So for that purpose, asynchronous programming is introduced. So simply what asynchronous means is here. So avoid fallback health. So what asynchronous means is it will no, your code won't wait. When you specify this async, you are telling the Dart compiler or the Flutter engine or your application that this will make wait. This will be delayed. So don't strictly wait for the execution of this. Go and do some other code execution. So let's say this network call was first not async, so the application was waiting here. So, but then I did a async network call. When I do an asynchronous network call, what will happen is the network call will be made, and then my application will move on to execute some other code. So let's say you have a loading animation defined. So while the data of weather is being fetched, you have a loading animation. So then the application will go and it will show the loading animation. It won't just wait here the data returns. So that is what async means, or that is the concept of asynchronous basically. So if you just try to understand this code, what it is manually dealing here. So in the example I just gave, a network call was being made, but just to emulate this, let's just try to copy paste this code and see what happens. Let me try to run this. And we got no output. Wow. Because I never called the function. Okay, now let's see what happens. Okay, I also need to give a message. And my run button is, oh no, code so bad. The button just went away. Let me just, okay, it's back, and define name. Okay, let it be. And now I try to run the code. And hello came here. But if you try to notice, it was a bit slow. So what I'll do is I'll increase delay to, let's say, 6 seconds, and then I try to run the code. So now we'll have to wait here. We are waiting, and the run function is available, but the output isn't printed here. So it will wait for 6 seconds and then it will print. So as you can see, if I run this code, so let's say you made some network call here and there is no output. Your user is staring at a blank screen. So you don't want that to happen. So that's why we say that this code is async. So if I had some other code written here, the execution would just proceed on because this function is asynchronous. So the execution wouldn't just wait for this function to return, it would just proceed on, and the application won't be frozen. So, and then there are exceptions and all of these topics in here. So if you come back to this, gist here, there are the samples, and then there is another link for cheat sheets here. So if you just need some Dart code to copy paste, you can simply go here, try to figure out what is it you are trying to do, and it will give the output to you. And so there are lots of basic to advanced concepts here. So they really, and all of this is a part of the Dart documentation. So like I said, the docs are really beginner friendly, and you should definitely refer the docs while you're trying to learn. So
Wilfred, um, Wilfred, sorry to disturb. We have two doubts in the chat. Can you please address that?
yeah, sure. So by once Baghel, how does learning Dart will help me building in Flutter applications? So how does learning Dart will help me in building Flutter applications? So Dart is the language you write your Flutter code in. So Flutter is a framework. So what framework? Basically, a framework is, it's just a bunch of functions, or let's say some things you can use, but you need a core programming language. So the core programming language is Dart. So without Dart, you cannot write your code. And then I saw there are many widgets in it. Where is Dart used? I don't quite get your question. I saw there are many widgets in it. Where is Dart used? So widgets are basic UI components of Flutter. So whatever Flutter code you write, whatever visual components are there, those are widgets. So let's say this is my one heading. This is one component in my application. This heading, let's say it's called heading. So this is one widget, and the code that I will write for it would be written in Dart. So Dart is a programming language. Flutter is a framework that utilizes the Dart language and provides you the functionality. So Dart is a language, Flutter is a framework. Flutter utilizes the Dart language to provide you the functionality. And moving on to the another question. Please explain async more clearly. I'm not able to understand. Okay, and let me just try to explain it in more detail. So I'll just shift to my whiteboard again, and okay, so let's try to understand the practical scenario here. Uh, did you understand this practical? Okay, never mind. I'll just explain it again. So let's say this is your application. It does very basic thing, a simple task. It displays the weather. So there is some service on the internet that will give you the weather. So what our application does is it asks the user for city. So if I say my city is Mumbai, and then this is a button. So when I click this button, I need the weather of Mumbai to be displayed on my screen. Let's say in this bottom part, I need the weather. But what happens is, when you ask this service, you will take the city Mumbai and you will ask the service that, hey, give me the data of Mumbai. So this service doesn't have to be fast. What if this service is slow? What if it will give you the response in, let's say, 3 seconds? So your application here has to wait 3 seconds, because what happens is the execution of code is synchronous. So synchronous means in one by one order. So synchronous in, let's say it happens in synchronous order. So what the meaning of a synchronous key, the word synchronous, it basically means that in a predefined order. Here the execution of the code will happen line by line. So okay, back to the Dart pad. So the example I showed earlier, let's say I have some code that
क्या तेरे लैपटॉप से ब्लूटूथ बंद कर हाँ हाँ एक
I think somebody is unmuted. Please mute. Code taking user input. code asking a service for weather data and code displaying the data. Okay, so let's say these are the sections of your application. Text user input, code ask the service, and code that displays the data. So what happens in a synchronous style of execution is your application would be executed top down. So your executor, your let's say your application or compiler will come here. It will first see the code that takes user input. So it will ask the user for input. Once the user gives an input, let's say the user entered the city Mumbai and user clicked a button. So on button click, this code executes that gets data from the weather service. So let's say this weather service gives data in 3 seconds. So these 3 seconds, your code has to wait because it doesn't know. So the execution order is synchronous. So since these 3 seconds waiting time, any more code, let's say there you have written a loading animation. So this loading animation won't be displayed because your coding is in a waiting state. Because by default, the execution order is synchronous. What synchronous means is in a linear order. So it came here and it is waiting for this code to return. So let's say this 3 seconds increases to 60 seconds. For 1 minute, if your application doesn't show any data, what your user will say, your user will think that, okay, this application is bad. It just froze on me. I tried to click the button again. I tried to do something else on the application. But since your application, the code execution was stuck at this point for 60 seconds. No other code was executed. So you had the loading animation here, but since the execution was stuck here, no animation was displayed, nothing was done. So to avoid this, you have to specifically specify that this code will make or this asynchronous code. So you'll just specify here. It is done using the keyword async. So what async basically means is it will tell your compiler that this code is asynchronous. It means that this code will wait for some time. So the whatever output this whatever computation this piece of code is performing, it won't be instantaneous. It will take some time. So in the case of our weather service, it takes 60 seconds for the service to return us data. So for this 60 seconds, when you specify it asynchronous, that compiler will specifically know that, okay, this code will make me wait while this 60 seconds, while I have a result here, I'll go and do something else. So when you are basically freeing the waiting time here, the application doesn't have to wait for this code. It knows that this code will give me some result at a later point. I have to wait for it to happen. So I'll just wait and I just won't relax here. I'll go and do something else. So some other piece of code will be executed. So you have this loading animation here. This loading animation will be displayed. So you would have to write the logic. So you have written a logic that, okay, make the network call, and while the service is returning the data, the waiting time is 60 seconds. So then show the loading animation. So since you specified explicitly asynchronous, so what asynchronous code means is that it won't obstruct your linear flow of execution. So let's say loading animation, it happens. So even if you show some 60 seconds ka loading animation, the user knows that, okay, I am seeing a loading animation. It means something is happening in the background. That's why I'm getting the loading animation. So this is what asynchronous code enables you to do. So let's take a very practical case of Instagram. So I'll just go back to whiteboard and clear this all out. And so Instagram has this section in the second option here beside home. There is this search feed. So you can see your Instagram feed. So it is divided into grid, and this is the whole grid here. So let's say there are different videos that are being shown here. So let's say the video that is being shown here is not working. The service that was returning the video for this is slow. So meanwhile, this service ka data is coming. You don't have to, freeze all of the other applications. Your application can, let's say it has the data for this part of the screen. So just go and show the data for this part. And here it will, let's say, show some loading animation. And similarly for other cases. So whatever data it has, it will just go and show here. And once it detects that, okay, this service gave me data, it will come back here, it will show the data and it will move on. It will keep jumping around. It just won't, stay frozen. So that is asynchronous. If this code was synchronous, then the data would be, let's say it started from here and it goes in a serial order, let's say 1, 2, 3, these are numbered columns here, cells here. So it will just go to cell 1 and cell 1 is making it wait. So even if it has the data for cell 6, it has to wait because the code is synchronous. So you don't want that type of behavior with your code. So that is what asynchronous is. So I hope that your doubt was cleared. And I can see there are some more doubts. How is hot reload different than preview in Android? So preview in Android, if you know, it still takes some time. And what happens internally is the whole application code recompiled. The application binary file, the APK file is built and it is reinstalled on your application. So if you're doing some minor changes, you won't notice the difference. But if you try to do some big changes, let's say major part of your code is changed, then it will give you an error that some part has changed that the preview cannot load. You need to rebuild the whole application. So you need to stop the execution completely and then hit the run button again. And then whole cycle of Gradle build and whatnot will happen. And then the application results will be shown. So that is hot reload. So also there is the concepts of compiling, just in time compiling and ahead of time compiling. Explaining those would be sort of out of for this session, but I'll surely link some resources in the gist so that you can give it a read. And then I can see another question that, do I need a high-end PC to run Flutter? You do need some specifications. So the minimum I would recommend is a PC with, let's say, i5 processor and 8 GB. So it doesn't have 8 GB of RAM. So it doesn't have to be a high-end PC, but you need a decent PC for that. If you just try to do it on Pentium or i3 processors, it won't. A minimum of i5 and 8 GB RAM is needed. And it's not a totally high end, but you need a good PC for that. And but what if we don't know the exact time? Okay, so a follow up to the follow up to the async question that what if we don't know the exact time? So that is the exact problem that asynchronous solve. For this time I told you, so you aren't specifying the waiting time here. So let me go back to the code. So here I assume that the waiting time is 60 seconds, but if I just don't know the waiting time, the code is asynchronous. The compiler doesn't care that you make it wait for 3 seconds or make it wait for 60 seconds. It just knows that you will give some data at a later point in time. So it doesn't matter that whenever you, even if you make it wait 10 minutes, it will know when the data is back and it will go and perform the application. So you don't specifically specify the time. You just tell the compiler, tell the executor that, hey, this piece of code will make you wait. So while it makes you wait, you don't just relax, go and do something else. So then it will come and let's say it will show the loading animation. So how long it will make the code wait, it doesn't matter. And yeah, there are no more doubts in the chat. So let's move on. Yes, we were on the Dart cheat sheet. There are lots of code here, and there is also this sweet little execution prompt here, so you don't have to jump here and there just to copy paste code. You can just execute the code here, and it will give you instant results. So use this resource. So let's quickly move on. If you have any more doubts, you can put those in the chat. And let's finally go to Flutter. All this hype is built up, but finally we are talking about Flutter. So let me just we'll come back to this later on. Let's just go to the basic introduction of Flutter. So These are install and all sections. If you just need to install Flutter on your devices, there are installation and stuff like that links here. There are also these resources shared here. But basic introduction, like getting started, there is a piece of code given here. I'll just run the code and wait for the output. Waiting, and no output. Okay, output is here. Hello world. So what this simply does is this is a semi-mobile screen, let's say, sort of a mobile screen. So whatever output you just whatever code you wrote here, it will show on your mobile application. So your basic absolute hello world Flutter application looks like this. If you just take this Flutter code and try to run it in your application, it will show you hello world. I think there is an image below here. Never mind. Okay, so what this code does is it first calls Terial.dat. It is a necessary import. We'll take a look at this later. And this is the main function. So as we know, main function is the starting point of anything. So in our Dart code also, we had this main function. So in this main function, there is this run app. You're telling the function that, okay, run this application. This is my Flutter application, run it. So this is actually the widget code or the UI code you have written. So what you are trying to do here is you're displaying a text, this text hello world. You are displaying text. So you are specifying your text. And this text direction, this is left to right. If you just change it to right to left, then the text would be displayed in the reverse order. But the main important part is you're displaying this text here and you're telling it this is a text widget. So what it will do is, okay, it is a text widget, then I need to load some font and I need to determine the direction and then the font size and all of the stuff like that will do it. Then the second thing you're doing here is specifying center. So this, as you can see, it is displayed in the center of the screen. If I just want to, center, then the simple just one wrap it in one center widget and your code gets done. If you're writing code for Flutter web, then you don't need to worry about centering a div, because all you have to do is specify the here and your whatever component you're trying to center will get centered. So the big problem of centering a div is taken away. And you can simply read about here. And these are some basic widgets. There is a text. Okay, so there is output here. So this is an example of a mobile screen. So, and this is a complete Flutter application. So ready to ship. You can absolutely publish this application on Play Store and it will work. So what is happening here is there is lots and lots of code, but we'll start from side out. We'll go to the hello world. So if I just try to look where the hello world text is, here is the hello world text. This text is in center. So right now, as I have specified the center here, the text is in center. But let's say I try to remove this center. So what I'll do is I'll first take this out and I'll delete this center widget and I just paste this text here. And now when I try to run this code, let's see what happens. Happening, and it will take some time. So meanwhile, the output is shown here. What will happen is it will go to, see, it went to the top because I didn't specify anything. So it went to the, that is the default behavior. Whatever text is there, just try to start displaying it from the top and top to bottom. So since I didn't specify anything, so if I just have to center it, I have to specify the center widget. So the concept of widgets, this text is a widget for the application. You see this example title here, this text is written here. This is again a text. So this text is another widget for the application. Then there is this my app bar. So you can see the navigation menu and this whole menu bar here. So this menu bar is a component, is a widget. So a widget is the smallest display component in the Flutter application. And I repeat, a widget is a smallest display component in a Flutter application. So what this means is there is this another widget called column. So I want to display multiple columns in my application. So columns vertical centering. So if you try to do columns, display columns in native Android. Back when I tried that, it was hard for me. It was frustrating, but here you just have to specify that this is column, and your application, it will start displaying it in column. So this is widget, and then there is this another material, and so you're basically returning. So what happens is this is the main build function. So this build function is sort of the core of Flutter. So whatever code you write in this build function will be displayed on screen. So here, this example title, this text widget is shown, then this another text widget is shown. So all of this is written in the build function. So what happens is, whenever Flutter needs to repaint the screen. So what repainting means is, this is, let's say, one screen, but let's take the example of Instagram. The content is constantly refreshing. So what your application needs to do is, it has displayed one frame, then it has to display another frame, then another frame. So whenever something needs to be redrawn on the screen, Flutter will come to the build function, and whatever is specified in this build function, it will display on the screen. So here in this build function, we have these two, hello world and example title. So if I just say my name here and I run this code, what it will do is, it will come to the build function. Since there is, you can see there is also lots of other code here, but it needs to execute some code. So it will come here, it will check this build function out. Okay, this build function, so whatever is written in this build function, so we specify widgets that we want to display on the screen. So it will take all of the widgets specified here, it will go and it will display on the screen. So yeah, it's sort of slow for me. So you can try this out, and let's move on using material components. So what material components means is, Google has, the Flutter team has already defined lots and lots of components that are ready to use. So let me just if I Google Flutter widgets catalog, it will take me to Flutter widgets catalog, and there are, these are various categories. So let's say I need to display simple text. So I don't need to try to sit and write the text functions for all. There are rich text. So these are basically default available widgets. And let's try to see other ones. So let's say we are trying to implement scrolling. So I don't need to specifically write the sit and write the scrolling functions. These are already given given widgets here. So we have grid view, we have list view. So if you have ever worked with Android navigation, these are the different types of display components. Let's say we have to take inputs. So input, there are various types of input. There is autocomplete, there is form field, and raw keyboard listener. So let's just read the description of this. So whenever user presses a key, a callback will happen. So you need to know, let's say you're making an application, a keyboard application that suggests auto completion word. So what you need to do is, let's say the user type the words, the user is trying to type hello. So the user typed H, the user typed E, the user typed O. So now since these three characters are typed, you can guess that the user is trying to type hello. So for every character, you need to run some logic. You need to check what the character is the user has entered. Then you need to check your database that, okay, do I have some word in my data that has the initial characters HEL? So does any word have these three characters? So let's say hello has these three characters in the beginning. So you take a guess that, okay, the user is trying to type hello. So I'll just show a recommendation to the user. So if you're trying to do that, you don't need to sit and write the logic. You just need to call this one widget, and all of that will be taken care of. Then there is autocomplete. Let's say for your keyboard application, the user, you have to autocomplete this. You suggested the word hello. Now the user wants the word hello. So you will use this autocomplete widget that will simply replace the text. You also don't have to try to write the logic for that. If you just go to this form, then you can simply create a form here, and see, the code is all provided ready-made. So you don't have to try to sit and write the code from scratch. There are the code is there in the resources. You can just simply take the code, test your application out. So what this does is, it speeds up your development cycle. So you, let's say you're in an hackathon, there is time constraint, so you can definitely do that. Then there is, let's say you want to display an icon. So there is icon widget, there is image, then there is image widget, raw image. This is another type of widget. So yeah, there is this widget catalog. There are a huge catalog. I don't remember the exact count, but it's well over 100, 200 widgets are there in this catalog. And they also run this widget of the week series. So textile, and so they have covered lots of widgets. If you want to, learn about widgets, just go to their YouTube channel and you can learn about those. And I think we can go back here. Yeah. So I hope the idea of widgets was clear. Now let's take a look at what layouts mean. So layout in Flutter. So layout is basically a grouping of widget. So we have this bottom navigation bar. Let's take just my screen. So here, what is happening here is there is menu bar. So this menu bar is a layout. So it's just a collection of individual widgets. Let's say this is a text widget, this is a text, all of these text widgets. Then there are these icons, there is this button. So I just grouped all of these to form a layout. So I can call this as one layout, my menu bar. So my one layout, my menu bar layout, and this menu bar layout has different, components or different widgets in it. So similarly, they have given this example here. So internally, what happens is every UI is represented using trees. Flutter builds internal widget trees. So it will first have the container. So this whole menu bar, let's say we are trying to discuss, is a container. Similarly, in the case of this bottom navigation bar, it will take this whole container. And then it has this row. So these three are there. This is one row. This is one row of icons here. So there is this row. So then there is a column. So if you take this individual, this call section here, so there is this icon of phone and there is this text call. There is this arrow and there is this text route. There is this icon of share and there is this text share. So these are individual columns because they are in a column structure. They are vertically aligned. So then this column has icon and then another container containing a text. So there are these three. So for these three columns here, there is this. So what Flutter does is whatever widget code we write, it builds these internal representation widget trees. These are called widget trees, and it builds the widget trees for these applications. So layout of a widget. So if you want to, let's say, center. So this is center can be whatever is there inside this center, it will be displayed. So then there is center layout. And let's go to the tutorial section here. And there is this whole example of, trying to build this. When you're trying to, every single component, you just try to abstract it because if this might look like just another screen, but as developers, if you have to just think about it, you are a developer and you have to make this screen. You have to first figure out this image. You have to put this image, you have to put it at the top. Then there is one little section. So this has some text, some subtitle text. Then there is this icon, there is this text. So all of these you can make individual layouts. So you can make layouts and you can say that this is my bottom navigation layout. So, on each screen, there is a bottom navigation bar. If you want to show, you can just make one layout and you'll call this layout again and again. So you'll just call this one layout and it will show the output. So these layout is basically understand that a grouping of widgets. Because if you see here, this icon is an individual, this text is an individual widget. All of these individual widgets are just grouped together and we have a whole layout. So a grouping of widgets is what a layout means, the basic idea. And yet again, this is a big resource here. There are practical applications, videos and stuff like that. So there is this card widget and stack and there's this list view. So if you want to display a list of things, you can make a list layout. And what this list has, it has an icon, it has a title text, it has a subtitle text. So you can just put it all these in a list view. So let's see here, there is this underscore title. So this list view is my one layout and it has multiple children. So these are the children of it. So it has multiple title widgets and these contain a text and an icon. And if I just come here, then this displays individual widgets here. That is the text and the icon, the title text, the subtitle text, and the icon. So this whole is a layout. So let's say some other developer is responsible for making these. Let's say there is you are working in a team, and you don't care how this looks. You just have these data that you need to show. So what you'll do is you'll just call this list view and just call this title, and it will show this layout on the screen. You don't care what happens internally. So because the digits are grouped, the grouping might change, and you just never need to care about this, what is happening. You are just responsible for displaying the layout. So this sort of abstraction, it also enables sort of teamwork, and it's the basic idea. And then there is also this simple resource here. If you just come here, then there are lots of ready to use applications. So lots of PBL projects for you folks to submit. I wouldn't recommend submitting, just copy pasting the code. You should try to learn it. Here you can see the various what the user interface of the application is, and some description. And if you just click on the source code here, it will directly take you to the GitHub repository of the code. So if you just want to refer some resources or trying to learn, so when learning Flutter, one thing is sure that there are abundant resources. If you go on YouTube, there are lots of tutorials, the documentations and samples. It is extensive. And apart from the documentation, I don't think there is any other resource needed. But, whatever suits your need, you can do that. And coming back to the Flutter roadmap here, if you have a basic idea of Flutter and you want to get started with it, okay, here it is. So I found this repository here. It has a really nice roadmap. So first, first programming, you need to understand what Dart programming is. Then you obviously need an IDE, so Android Studio or Visual Studio Code, VS Code, and that is there. Then there are widgets. So there are different types of widgets you need to learn. Then so this is a really nice roadmap, and you can definitely refer it. And when you're trying to get the first, if you're willing to learn Flutter, get started with Dart, then set up your development environment, then learn about widgets. So widgets also has this stateful widget, stateless widget, accessibility. These are multiple types. Once you're done with these, go these, and all of these you just can just come in the documentation, search here, and there are also groups. You can obviously come and reach out there. So I think that's all I had to cover, and we can take some doubts. And yeah, before we go to the doubt solving, there is something special, and that is that we will be hosting a offline hands-on session for Flutter on 15th of March. So when it's 15th, so next week, Wednesday, we are hosting an offline session in our college. So you're free to register for the session. The registration and RSVP links will be out soon. But this is just a spoiler alert that something is happening. So there we'll be building a practical application. So and just a heads up that you don't need Android Studio or Visual Studio anything set up. We'll use the college labs, and we'll actually do the coding in a browser. So we'll make an Android application in a browser. So there is a secret sauce for that, and you'll get to know about it on the day of the session. So if that is all, then you can shoot your doubts. And will be there are some questions. Will we do Firebase or API integration in this session? So the content of the session is under discussion. So we first need to try to understand the level of the audience that will be there. And once we finalize, we'll certainly release the topics we would be covering in that session. So let me just scroll up and okay. Flutter and Firebase. And if you have any more doubts, then you can obviously ask in the chat. You can unmute and speak it out, share your screen. We can do that too. We are all there to help.
Wilfred, we do have one doubt. Can we have one widget over another widget overlapping?
Overlapping, I don't see a practical scenario where you would need an overlap. But let's say in your application, overlap does happen. So you can obviously have, you can position a widget. Let's say you are, trying to, why not? I'll just show it to you on whiteboard. So let's say you're making an application. I'm making a simple whiteboard application. Let's say this whiteboard application I'm trying to do. So I just do something and then I just do again something. So this is overlapping. So I just need to specify whatever my widget boundaries are. And let's say I specify the position here. So what happens is we need to specify the position. Let's say have this. I'll just draw it a bit nicely. So let's say we have just a sec, okay. We have this, and let's say the position of our one widget is at this point. So obviously I can just bring in another widget, put at this point. The widget would overlap it, so the underlying widget won't be visible. It would just sit on top of that. So if you need to achieve this sort of behavior, there is already a widget defined for that. There is a widget called as stack widget. So it does exactly what you asked. It allows you to overlap your widget. And yeah, also our ML campaign is on its way. Stay tuned for that also. And please include integration of ML model to Flutter. So we'll try to do that. We'll send out some forms, some polls, some sort of feedback from you that what you want. And we are all there to help in the group. If you have any doubts, you can keep asking on those doubts. And yeah, I'll have a sip of water.
Okay, while we are having this doubt session, can everyone just take out their time to fill the Flutter feedback form? It helps us to understand like on what part we can improve the coming sessions, or any suggestions that you want to make. You can make there. Feel free to fill that form. And whatever doubts you have, you can ask right now. We have the time. We have some time that we can cater to more doubts, and even if you have some doubts after this session, you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp groups that we have, or maybe Discord and everything. So we'll wait for more 5 minutes. Till then, you can ask any doubts you have.
Yes, if you have any doubts, then just put it in the chat, raise your hand, unmute and speak. Everything is fine. Just to let me know if there is any doubt in the chat. Meanwhile, we'll just take out the widget catalog because there are really lots of widgets available. There is also lots of catalog resources. Let's see what exists here. You can also have a style widget. So let's say there is some application that if you have ever seen an iPhone, it has a specific style to its iOS. So you can make applications for your Android using Flutter that look like iOS. So what this enables is a seamless user experience, because if your users are using iOS for a long time, then I think ever since the early days of iPhone, if the style of the widget that exists, it's is consistent. But if you consider Android, then Android, every manufacturer, Samsung has a different style of user interface. Xiaomi has a different. So if you are trying to get some sort of consistency, and let's say your users have a background of iOS, or you're trying to just keep a simple streamlined user interface, then you can just pick out you can make iOS, because Apple generally won't change their style of UI. And if you for Android, you can obviously utilize these iOS style widgets, and you can do that. So this could be an action sheet. So iOS users might be familiar with this. So this action sheet, that is, there is ready-made code here. So whatever widgets you need of iOS style, the major widgets are there available. So there are lots of series. Put in a switch if you are trying to implement a toggle button or a radio button or stuff like that, or these icons here. Because earlier, do I have it loaded? Yes. So here these icons and the icons that are there for iOS, these are different type of icons. The styling of these icons is different. But if you just need your iOS thing, then it's there. Then there are advanced widgets and animation concepts and lots of resources here. And
Wilfred,
even yeah.
we have one doubt in the chat as well. Somebody has raised their hands.
Is Flutter better than React Native? So I haven't tried React Native, but in my experience, it's sort of in debate, and you have a choice to make because both of these are powerful frameworks. Based on your needs and what specifically you need. Let's say you have a code base specifically like already implemented using React, then utilizing React Native might make sense for you. And if you're just building it from scratch and you need ease of development, then you can definitely go with Flutter. And I won't say one is better than the other. They both have advantages, they both have their disadvantages. But one thing that is there in React Native is there is something called as a JavaScript bridge. So I'll just explain that in few minutes. So what happens in React Native? Where is the eraser? All right. So whatever code you write HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that you basically write your React code, and this code needs to be compiled to your native code. So let's say my Android application understands only Java. So I need some way for this React code to be converted into this Java code. So there is something called as a JavaScript bridge. So what happens in the execution of HTML and CSS interface, all of the code gets converted into some sort of JavaScript, and the JavaScript is what your browser executes. So what happens is this JavaScript code needs to be converted to this Java code. So there is something called as this JavaScript bridge. So what this bridge does is will take your React code and it will convert it to a native code. And what native conversion happens is if you have made, let's say, a button here. So what React Native will do is it will also make native button. So whatever Java code for making a button is, it will generate the Java code. It will apply the styling to it and it will display the text on it. So there are debates that this JavaScript bridge adds a performance overhead. So as your applications grow, it might be slow or the development cycles might be slow. But both of these frameworks, React Native and Flutter, have performed exceptionally well. If you see the application of Instagram, it's mostly built using React Native. So Instagram works really well. The application is super quality built. So it is built using React Native. If you use Google Pay, then Pay is mostly built using Flutter. Paytm's application is some sort of it has Flutter integration to it. So both of these are there. And Pratik has shared his experience. He writes, it's faster than React Native. Our React Native app crashed, so I am with Flutter. It's better. So yeah, he believes Flutter is better. And there is one feedback asked by Neeraj Rao. Actually, I am not from TCET. Can I fill the feedback? So Anam can address that query for you.
So basically after each session ends, there is I guess a feedback form which goes around by GDSC website itself. So you can fill that itself. The feedback form I shared in what's in the chat right now, it's for TCT students. So but as we need it for the documentation work and all that.
So we'll
Also
be
we have
taking
one person who has raised their hand. They can ask their doubts.
Yeah, hi. My doubt is actually not related to Flutter, but since Wilfred addressed about the Instagram app, so I'm curious about the feedback, the feeds you get in the Instagram app. Suppose I make an app similar to Flutter and I made the basic navigation bar layout and all. Now I also made a layout on which regarding the basic feedback, like we're having the username, we're having the whatever the reel or the post from that person, and we see that that feed is endless, like we go on scrolling and it's endless. So how does that data about various persons go on appearing on our screen? And one more, that how can we fetch that data from the any of the databases?
Got it. I understood your question. So back to my awesome drawing skill on the whiteboard. So what happens is, let's simply take the example of an Instagram feed. So this is your feed. It has these columns, and you keep on scrolling, and this keeps on going on. So we have, let's say, how many columns? These are 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So these are 12 grids here. So what it will do is your application will partition your phone's screen into 12 logical sections, and it will detect that which are in view. So let's say there were some other sections here too. So the user scrolls above these. So these three, when the user scrolls up, the 1, 2, and 3 are out of the view. So what it will do is it will make an API call to Instagram's server, and it will say that send me 3 more reels because my user wants to see 3 more because the user has scrolled. So what your application does is it tracks what is displayed on your screen, and it tries to estimate what you will do. So what it will do is, if your screen there are 12 feed items displayed, so it will fetch 12 more, and total 24 will be stored cached in your application. So it will be ready with 24 feed applications. And let's say you have seen your this 12 that was here, you scroll it and this thing goes to the top of your screen. So now these 12 are exhausted, the 12 that were stored backup are on the screen. So it will again make an API call to the server, and it will tell it that, okay, send me more 24. If the user is scrolling fast, the application will track that. It will detect that, okay, the user is rapid scrolling. So it will tell the API that, okay, don't give me 24, give me, let's say, 50 results. So stuff like that. So it sees what is displayed on your screen. And both Flutter and React Native, what they do, they will in the memory. So your applications have a memory defined in the RAM. So let's say this is your RAM. So what it will do is, whatever is displayed on your screen. So there are 12 reels displayed on your screen. So only these 12 will be in your memory. It did fetch 24, but these 24 won't be in the memory. So your app would actually use less memory. So they tried, so the frameworks, both React Native and Flutter do this. So what they do is they track what only the visible part is stored in the memory. So if you, let's say, these reels ID with 1, 2, 3, you remove these. So what it will do is it will remove it out from the RAM, and it will put 3 more. So whatever is displayed to the user, only that content is loaded in the app. It's not that, okay, there are 50 more reels are brought in the application, so the application memory utilization increases. So most of these things are taken care by the framework, so you don't need to bother with that. But as far as my knowledge of native goes, you need to up to a certain degree take care of this whole thing on your own. But these frameworks, they do it all for you. So yeah.
Okay, I
And
understood
Pratik,
that, but I'm having one more doubt that suppose if in my code there's a layout, so every time the API is being called, so again and again my that layout is going to build. Is that it or something else?
so for that, there is a concept of stateful and stateless widgets. So uh, I'll explain that. So there are two types of widgets in Flutter application: stateful and stateless. Just give me a second. So what a stateful widget means, it will rebuild the screen, will cause the screen to rebuild, and a stateless application won't cause a rebuild. So when you are making your widgets, if you are making a tile for your Instagram application, you know that the content there will be changing. So you will declare that widget as a stateful widget. So then the Flutter framework, the interpreter knows that, okay, this widget will cause me a screen rebuild. So it will, the internal representation is made such that it basically knows ahead of time. It knows that this will cause a change. Let's stateless widget, it won't cause a rebuild. So if we just go back to the examples that we were checking out earlier, just a second. We were on widgets. And here you can see this is a stateless widget, because when I run this code, this displays a hello world. So just give thought that does this code do anything that needs to be rebuilt? Because all we are doing is displaying this static hello world text here. So we are specifically declaring here that this widget is a stateless widget. So Flutter will know that okay, this widget won't cause a rebuild to my screen. So the internal representation, the internal architecture of this whole widget will be such that it won't trigger a rebuild. So what happens, considering the case of Instagram, is they also have the function of hot reloading. So what happens there is, let me go back on my whiteboard, and let's say this is your application. These are again the grids in your feed. So if this one grid, the content here needs to be changed, it is only built such that the pixels that are needed to be repainted, only the pixels for this one little square will be repainted. The whole of this remaining screen, it will just stay static. If because the content here is static, if you're displaying your images here, you don't need to rebuild the entire screen. So the framework takes care of it for you. So if your widget is declared stateless, let's say you have a combination of stateful and stateless widgets. So if you make this style as a stateful widget and the rest of these are stateless widgets, so these widgets, these pixels will never be repainted. Only the pixels that are in this part of your screen will be repainted. So I hope your doubt is cleared, and we are almost to the end of the session. So any more doubts we can take on? If you have any other modes you want to ask, feel free.
If you have more doubts, then you can reach out to us on WhatsApp group as well. So with that, I would like to thank Wilfred for taking the time to share your knowledge and expertise with us in today's session. And your insights and guidance have been invaluable. And I'm sure the attendees have gained a lot of valuable knowledge from your presentation. I once again thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. And we are looking forward to next sessions that we have. We will be soon having a hands-on session in Flutter, and as someone asked, ML campaign will also start soon, just after Flutter campaign ends. You have to stay tuned for that. Till then, bye everyone.
Thank you all for attending, and do fill out the feedback at both places. You'll get an email for sharing your feedback from the official GDSC portal. So fill out your feedback there, fill out on the forms they are circulated, and we do take a look at the feedback. So yeah. Thank you all for attending.